Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our quarterly E3. And today we have a wonderful panel set up for you guys, and it will be moderated by Mr. Ron Washington. Today's topic, the power of inclusive leadership strategies during change, is an important one for every single one of us in the industry and beyond. So I am excited to see everyone attend, and I hope that you enjoy the webinar as much as I know that I'm going to. My name is Amy Fitzpatrick, and I'm the Director of Marketing for IAVM. Before I turn it over to Ms. Sharon and allow her to introduce your esteemed panel for today, I just want to recommend to everyone, as you listen to the webinar, if you have questions that you would like to ask of the panel, please just look at the bottom of your screen and you'll see a function that says Q&A. If you'll click on that, you can type your questions into the Q&A section, and Sharon will be helping to moderate that and make sure that those are answered at the end of the webinar. So Ms. Sharon, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Thursday afternoon, I believe, and welcome to the discussion. Your questions are definitely welcome, so make sure you put that in the Q&A. Please feel free to participate, and you can ask any one of our esteemed panelists any questions. So like Amy said, this is the power of I, inclusive leadership strategies during change. And so we're going to talk about this from different levels of management, levels of experience, background, everything. And so we're going to go into a lot of different strategies on what that looks like for productivity, what that looks like as an individual. We'll talk about DEI and what that actually means, diversity and inclusion, what that actually means for each one of these panelists. So we have first, Dr. Debonair Oates Primus. I hope I said that correctly. Absolutely, she's from OVG. I'll allow them to give a little background information in just a second. We have Chloe Wright, event manager at Greenville Convention Center. And we also have the amazing Jeremy Ackles from also director of events. Is it events?
That's right.
Perfect. Also of Greenville Convention Center. Welcome, you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I want you guys to give an introduction of yourselves, but I also want you to describe yourself and describe your experience as an inclusive leader or leader. So who wants to go first? Anyway? Okay, so since all the ladies here, Jeremy, I'm just going to have you jump right in and go first.
All right. So it's usually ladies first.
Yeah,
but I guess we're gonna switch it up this time.
Today. Inclusive. We're including.
We're inclusive, right?
Yes, we're inclusive.
Well, yes, my name is Jeremy Ackles. I serve as the director of events here at the Greenville Convention Center, which is the OVG building. And I've been in the venue management world for going on 5 years now. It's been a rewarding ride for me. I just recently accepted a new position here with the Greenville Convention Center. So I've worked now in convention centers and in arenas. My experience with venue management ranges from venue safety and security to housekeeping to setup operations. I just really love this industry. Started off working in government administration. Now it really giving me an opportunity to learn more about, this industry.
Is that me?
Which is
no, I think it's because
no, Jeremy. I think we're okay. Do it again. Jump in right here. Yes, right here.
Okay. Well, yeah. Again, Jeremy Ackles. I don't know where it left off at, but
we just your background. You were just talking about your background as a leader.
All right. Yeah. So my experience as a leader starts early in my life, from being a big brother in a single parent household, being the man of the house at an early age really forced me to set an example for my little brothers as they journey through life. And it taught me how to motivate a different generation with their own special challenges. So I take that, family first. I always got to start there. But I've always sought leadership opportunities from serving my community on nonprofit boards like United Way to immersing myself in the venue management industry and serving now as the co-chair for diversity and inclusive leadership with IAVM. So, I do want to, make note that I consider myself a servant leader, and all these experiences really translates to that. To me, when it comes to leadership, it's important to invest in the growth and well-being of your people and overall culture. So, that's kind of my experience as a leader. Now I humbly serve as the director of events with OVG at the Greenville Convention Center. And here I lead all of our efforts from event management to safety and security, and I continue to learn every day.
Love it. Thank you so much. Dr. Deb, can you please tell us of your background and your leadership experience and inclusive leadership experience?
Sure. Because I do I talk about inclusive leadership all the time. But I'm Dr. Debonaire Primus. I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Oakview Group. So even though it's my first time meeting Jeremy and Chloe, hey, and I hope you guys can make some of our DEI events. I just left one right before this. So yeah, I've been at Oakview Group for a little bit over 12 months. I started last year this time. It was an inaugural position, and this is the first time OVG has ever had a VP of DEI. So basically my job at Oakview Group is to infuse diversity, equity, inclusion, and the fiber and DNA of our organization. So I focus a lot on evaluating our policies, our practices, developing programs and initiatives to make our spaces more equitable, more safe psychologically, and more inclusive. So that's my current job in a nutshell. I come from academia, as Sharon knows. I am born and raised in West Philadelphia, and I was, before this, the head of DEI for Community College of Philadelphia, which is like the largest public institution in Pennsylvania. And before then, I was the chair of our Black Studies program that I created there. And I also was the director of our diversity fellowship program there. So as you can see, I am knee deep in this DEI world, and I love it, and I haven't looked back. But yeah, so I'm a scholar, I'm a practitioner within the space. So there are different categories. So I'm just making that clear. So I'm both.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I know. Yeah. So that's my background. But to answer your question, Sharon, about what inclusive leadership means, I love this panel. I couldn't say yes fast enough, because inclusive leadership to me is something that we're just starting to, scrape the surface of within organizations, and it's so important. So one of my favorite analogies when I think about inclusive leadership is from Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown, and she has this Netflix special that you should all watch, but she uses this metaphor of the arena, and she says she actually does not get vulnerable with anybody who does not enter the arena with her. So inclusive leadership for me is like creating this like radical culture of courage, of like unapologetic authenticity, of empathy, of being self-aware, of like facilitating discomfort zones. So many people, the reason why they don't address certain issues when it comes to bias or inequity is because they're so afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. Nah, inclusive leadership means you're having them, and you're having them often. So I try to be, like a model for all of those things, showing up in the arena, being empathetic, putting myself in other people's shoes,
Right.
being affirming to people from underrepresented groups in particular, because we're not used to hearing, like what like our skills are, right? And like what we're good at. So much of inclusive leadership, we think is like so many things, but it's the basics. It's like letting your team, the people who report to you, especially from underrepresented groups, like identifying what their strengths are, and then telling them all the time. The first time I had an inclusive leader, she was a department chair, and she was a woman, and it was so simple. She probably took it for granted, but it meant so much to me. We were walking in the hallway, and she was like, I hope you go out for this opportunity. And I said, I might. And she was like, you'd be amazing at it. You're a great interviewer. You're a great public speaker. And then she just walked away. And I was like,
Here's the gift.
I know.
It's a gift to you. And then,
I know,
absolutely.
right? But
Absolutely.
then this is what inclusive leadership looks like, right? It's right? Like, it's just like, it's naming it. It's telling folks like, this is what you're good at. I do it all the time as a leader at OVG, and I just did it today in a one-on-one meeting with someone, and just like, you got this, because, and I named all the skills. And as she was listening, she was like, you sure? I'm like, I'm positive.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna get into definitely all of that, because I know you're ready to talk about complacency and being
oh my goodness,
compliant, right?
all of them.
But before we do that, Chloe, please
Yeah,
give
how
us
am
a
I
little.
supposed to follow that?
Well, you're amazing, right? Right. It's about being an incredible leader.
Yeah, well, my name is Chloe. I am currently an event manager at the Greenville Convention Center. I'm going into my 7th month, not only here, but in the events world in general. So very exciting for me. I come from a background in both video production as well as theater and all types of performing arts. So that's where I have a lot of my life and professional experience from. My leadership experience is from everything from creative roles to administrative roles and all things in between. I've worked with kids, I've worked who can't even read. I've worked with people who are the same age as me. I've worked with adults who are much older than me. And all of these different types of roles have helped develop my leadership style, and it changes with every person, every group that I work with. And so it's a lifelong journey that I enjoy developing as we go along, and I'm continuing to develop here with the team here at the Greenville Convention Center. And yeah, I'm excited to learn from this panel, learn from everybody's viewpoints, and bring it into our workplace and beyond.
And we're excited to learn from you too, Chloe. So don't forget about what information you bring to this panel as well, because you're here to do that as well. Okay, so I've cheated a little bit, you guys. I've talked to you all about these topics before, but I want to start with this article I wrote, which is the same title. I think it's Facility Management magazine, if I'm not sure. If I'm not too sure, it's IAVM's magazine. But I wrote an article about this topic for the January and February issue, and I talked first about avoiding compliance complacency. And a lot of times in this, I like to speak to this as the next normal. So a lot of times in this next normal, what I'm seeing is that diversity and inclusion is becoming an add-on, right? We have to say compliant. Yeah, I know, Dr. Deb.
I have no poker face. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's an add-on. And so it seems to be, we have to be compliant in these areas to keep in line, or, especially with HR these days, to make sure that we're following everything. There's no lawsuits, and not for the reason of why DEI is to be put in place. And it is actually to provide a mindset of inclusion. So rather, companies are sometimes becoming compliant, complacent, all right? So we want to avoid that. So I'm going to ask you guys this question about how to avoid that. And I'm going to start with the question of, what does it feel like? What does it mean to feel equitable and inclusive in an organization to you? What does that mean? Equitable and inclusive. How do you want the company to show up with equity and inclusion in the organization? And you can give specific examples. So I'm going to start with Chloe. Chloe, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah,
what does it mean? What does it mean for your company? You're new, 7 months in.
Yeah.
Equitable and inclusive.
I mean, there's the difference between equality and equity, and that's one of the biggest things that needs to be noticed and addressed. Equality, treating people equally the same. We're all different, and instead of trying to be like everybody gets the same thing, we should be embracing those differences and making the equitable experience for everyone. And if I'm part of a team, part of an organization, I want to feel like my voice is being heard, like I'm making a difference. So looking for people who listen to those ideas. And some of my ideas are going to suck and they're going to be the worst and they're not going to work out. But some of them might be like the perfect solution to a problem that just came up, or a problem that's been going on for however long. And I pop in 7 months later and I come with a new perspective, and we get the job done and we create a better outcome. So creating the field for that open line of communication and just letting everyone know that they're heard and that they're valued, and creating that safe place for them to be able to express those opinions and ideas is, I think, a very important stepping stone in the equity.
That sounds like equity, to be heard, not to be loved. It's a song, To Be Loved. I was going to sing, but I will save you from that notion. But to be heard is one of those things that you're looking for, it sounds like, Chloe, that will, for you, be a statement or a move towards being equitable and inclusive in an organization. Thank you. All right, Jeremy, equitable and inclusive.
Yeah,
What is
that was good. Yeah, I'm just really gonna piggyback off of that, because that kind of just segues into how I feel about this whole thing. I mean, for me, it just means empowerment. You know, people have to feel like they have the ability to be themselves. And with that, that also adds value. You know, when an organization embraces inclusivity, people feel encouraged to raise their hand, to, you know, provide insight and provide solutions based off of their unique experiences. So, you know, so everybody brings something to the table. And when you add empowerment to that, you know, people really feel engaged and they feel like they belong. And also too, it just, you know, it means people feel like they have the power to support and the tools that they need to really add value to the overall solution. So, you know, it's all about just supporting that, whether the idea sucks or if it's something you never heard of before, then, you know, embracing that and really taking time to understand more about what that really is. So that's what it means to me.
Perfect. That's great. Do you think, so having empowerment, is that, so let's give some specific examples. Do you want to be given power, autonomy on a project? What does that look like? Does that take the lead? Is that trust? What does that look like for you, Jeremy?
I think you just said it. It's trust. Okay. You know, I'm different. You know, allow me to be a leader and to go in and use my expertise to really bring something to the overall solution. You know, it may be something that you have no experience with, you've never seen before. You know, I may bring a different flavor of leadership to a culture that has been the same way for a very long time. You know, and so I feel like I'm empowered in my position. For example, you know, I'm coming into a brand new organization here. I started my job on the 3rd of this month. And so, yeah, so I've been given that empowerment to really just, there's no, you know, there's not a rule book that says you have to do this way, right. You know, and so that makes me feel included, especially as a leader, to come in and add my experiences to the overall solution. And so that's what it means to me, empowerment. I feel empowered. And I think, you know, if we want people to have that inclusiveness, that's what it's going to take.
Perfect. All right, Dr. Deb, equity and inclusivity. Now, I'm also going to add for you.
Oh,
I know.
Look at this. I'm getting
DEI expert. Yes, you get it.
Extra quiz questions. Go ahead. I'm getting nervous.
Do you have any experience that you want to share about complacency?
How much time do y'all have?
Well, we don't have a lot. No,
I'm joking.
It's 4:21. Like we're 21.
I'm joking. So yeah, Sharon knows this because we talked about it. I'll just quickly answer that question because I kind of want to piggyback off of what Jeremy and Chloe said about equity and inclusion. But complacency is something in DEI we saw a lot. Like DEI is ever evolving, but when I first started in DEI, for example, oh my God, almost 11 years ago, it was almost all compliance focused. Our head of DEI we had an office for 20 years and he had a law background, and that was most of it. It was mostly compliance. And if you follow DEI, I love the season that we're in now, because the fact that we're going beyond just affirmative action and, bias reports, right? That was what it was. When I first started, I'm an old millennial, they say. When I first started in higher ed, my biggest frustration was that for us, DEI meant like 1 week out of the year, had like diversity dialogues. And then the rest of the year, it was just making sure we were compliant with Title IX. And I'm like, wow, this is what DEI is. And it was so disappointing. It's how I got into it. I have a big mouth, and they put me on the diversity council, and I was like, this is all we doing all year? I was like, I'm a bounce if all we're doing is like doing this like week of diversity dialogues and like mediating bias investigations. I'm like, I'm good. I got papers to grade. I'm out. And I made a big old splash because people were just so used to just smiling and agreeing with people. Like, yep. And I'm like, this is a waste of our time. And I don't know if y'all know this, but it's a lot going on in this world that we could be addressing in DEI. So yeah, it's frustrating, but I also am loving the articles that I'm reading, the discourse, how it's changing. I wouldn't be in it if that's all we were doing. So that's exciting. But I do want to get back to the equity and inclusion part of your question, Sharon, because I think it's important. And I think it's important that we break down the difference. Because people love conflating them. But we're talking about diversity, we're talking about people. Right, we're talking about the brochures that companies put up about like their diverse groups. I'm serious. That's what that's what diversity is. It's representation, right? Yeah. Inclusion is how those people feel. They feel like they belong, right? In it. I mean, like, are they represented within leadership? Do they feel like they have a pathway to, to move up within the organization?
So before you move into that, right, I do want you to discuss more about the about being included to have the pathway. So give us just 2 tips on how that could be done effectively.
Okay, so I was going to
Work
I was going to get to that when I got the equity too, Sharon.
So okay. Good. Okay.
It works right in it. So equity is the hardest one of them all. It is the hardest one of them all. It is the one that keeps me up at night, because equity is when you actually have to put it into action, meaning you got to change policies and practices. Equity is power sharing, right? It's looking at the top leadership of companies and being like, I'm not represented, and how can we get more people that look like me in there? You can't do it without giving them, right? Focusing on them more than the others. Right? You can't do it without creating some type of leadership development program. That's one strategy, right? Create programs specifically targeted toward underrepresented groups. They're really popular right now. We see them all over. Groups, right? Programs, the diversity apprenticeship program we're seeing adapted in different spaces. They're only focused on people like underrepresented groups. And I see some descriptions where they're just focusing on BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous people of color. We have lots of women leadership programs, because equity means we have to look at also what hasn't been happening. So what hasn't been happening is that women, especially within this particular industry, have not been developed enough to move up within the ranks, right? So
we also have new groups. So I noticed you said look, but it's also experience now as DEI grows, right? So look, if you add look, we rarely talk about the disabled. We don't talk about other things who we're experiencing. I think you and I were talking about emotional unrest. So again, there's inclusion or diversity that comes in a variety of flavors these days, and not just our ethnic backgrounds, right?
No, right. But people don't realize is in order for folks to feel included, we have to address equity. Right? They go hand in hand. I'm a big data person, and the data shows, I think 73% of folks from underrepresented groups who are job seekers, make their decisions based on how diverse and inclusive they can find out that the organization is.
Okay.
Right? So all of that goes together. So we have to work on and have to have the uncomfortable conversations around how has bias influenced who's in our leadership positions, right?
Yeah.
Who's not being promoted.
Yeah.
When I first got to OVG, we did these focus groups for 3 months, and I got folks of 10 or more into a room, and we all asked them like the same 10 questions. And there's a lot of folks from underrepresented groups, and we used that data to decide what was going to be like our focus for the first year. What came back was so many folks from underrepresented groups said they don't feel like, you know, they're being focused on here. They don't see themselves reflected in our leadership here. And see, those are the kind of things that are hard. Like, that's the equity part. It's like, all right, you know, we got to look at the ways that bias is influencing all of our decision making. Not
It's a
y'all.
lot, and it can be intimidating. And I know some of the audience members think, oh my God, this just sounds like a lot of things that we have to do. But I would suggest to go tip in there. It is a lot, but one thing at a time. So move through one policy, one group of people at a time, and get it done. Rome wasn't built in a day. So getting it done and not being just compliant or complacent in compliance and actually doing it for the good of your organization is probably the best move that you could think about this when it comes to that type of strategy. Okay. So
hey, Sharon, I want to jump in on this compliance.
Please. I was going to move to something else, but go right ahead.
No, I mean, just thinking about it, you know, I think, you know, it's really twofold. Okay. You know, we can, you know, look down or frown upon an organization for just checking a box or just having a 1 week focus on diversity and doing nothing else or very minor for the rest of the year. So yeah, of course, you know, that's something that can be changed, but I think it's also up to us as individuals, as advocates, as people who understand, you know, what DE&I is and how it adds value to continue to keep hitting them across the head with it. You know, every month, hey, what are we doing this month? Or hey, you know, here's something you didn't know about me, or you know, let's learn about this. You know, and you can incorporate, you know, this initiative into so many different things. You know, you can incorporate it into your training. You can incorporate, you know, just embracing inclusivity in any project that you have. You know, when you bring a new team member on, there's just so many different opportunities to combat that. You know, and so yeah, it's their responsibility as well. But I think, you know, instead of just placing all of the blame and just waiting on them to do something, you know, it's an opportunity for yourself as well. So look within.
Initiate your stance. And that can happen, but sometimes it comes with opposition. So that can be difficult. So it comes with opposition, and it may look as if a whine, that you're whining about something that someone else may find very small, but you may say, hey, they don't have a program. I'm thinking about it now because I'm nearing retirement age. That is a hilarious joke to say aloud, but it's very true. It's very true. Yes, I'm under 10 years to retirement, just about 10 years to retirement. So I should be getting my the AARP card. Oh man.
But there are things about that.
Yeah, I know, that's okay. But there are things that I think about that are reflective. Again, we talk about the DEI space. We will have to have a conversation about different generations, because that is also about inclusion. There is also, my mom was working, she still is, so she's working in her 60s, and she felt that there was bias there. So there is still this, there is not only just inclusion in diversity and exclusion of other people of ethnicities, but there are other spaces that we haven't even touched the surface about, which is exciting. So moving into that, let's talk about what habits that we can practice when we talk about these biases, right? This biased language and behaviors. I know people get really uncomfortable with pronouns these days. That's the new thing that's happening. They're really getting uncomfortable with having to figure out how to identify some people. So I want you guys to talk about some strategies that you're implementing to reduce kind of biased language or behaviors. Anybody can jump at this.
All right, I'll jump in. So I know this is all about the power of I, right?
Yes.
You know, but when it comes to that, I like to implement the power of and.
Okay.
All right. So the power of and, that's gonna align, inclusive in communication, and also to a whole mindset, in my opinion. Many people are excluded in communication due to the or mentality, because it really separates one idea from another. You're either this, you're the red or blue, you're either that or this. However, when you embrace and in communication, it just brings things together. It explores more solutions.
Give us an
At one
example. Give us an example, like a concrete example. Give us an example of the power of and. You got
Well,
one?
I just learned about this myself, but yeah, I mean, one example that I can point to, and we all have one of these, is a phone, right? At one point, you can carry your phone or a flashlight or a calculator or a music player, a camera, but somebody had a vision using the power of and now your phone has all those features in one. So when you use that in communication, you're combining ideas. You're combining, this idea with that one to bring in just an inclusive solution. And it really encourages and empowers people to really speak up and feel like their voice is being heard. So instead of thinking or, just replacing it with and, just takes you a little bit further, and makes people feel a bit more inclusive when it comes to finding solutions.
Perfect. Anybody else? Inclusive, to talk about how to kind of avoid, what strategies have you implemented for biased language? You can talk about the use of pronouns in how that has helped you in your organization. I know one thing that comes up definitely in academia, because I see students all the time, is correct enunciations of names. That's very important to me, because that's a part of people's history and cultural background, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is important for me to get the name right, because it seems of some type of disrespect to some of my students. So I make sure that I do that. Has anybody experienced that, or what are you trying to do? What are some tips that helped you to reduce kind of biased language and behaviors?
I mean, I definitely felt something when you said that about the name, because my name is spelled Chloe. Everybody spells it Chole on everything, ever. So when I see like somebody new that spells my name correctly, like I get taken aback for a second. And I see the effort of like confirming that is the correct spelling. And it's just that little thing that makes you feel seen and appreciated. And so just applying that to everything, like you were talking about gender inclusive language, and it can go into all sorts of inclusive language and accessibility in every form, is just putting forth the effort and being aware. That's 90% of the battle, is knowing that there's an issue and putting forth the effort. You're not going to get it right every time. But if you get somebody's pronouns incorrect, then you say, I'm so sorry, correct yourself, and you move on, and you've made the effort, you've learned from it. And then you both are better from that interaction, versus, making a big deal about it. And it is a big deal, but it's a chance for education for everybody involved, and including that in your communication with teams and organizations allows them to be educated as well. You don't have to be shoving it down people's throats or whatever, especially as I'm not as big of a leader in this organization, but just creating that
today, Chloe, today you're not.
But I'm saying I have power in my position,
yes,
to start that chain of inclusivity and create that effort that can hopefully be multiplied and applied to everybody else's behavior, towards each other, towards patrons, and just make a better experience for everyone.
Absolutely. Dr. Deb, I know you got a bunch of tactics. Come on, throw them one out there. I like Chloe. I think that was great. Even using your name, I get called Sharona, Sharon all the time. And I used to find it hard to correct people because I was more so kind of embarrassed for them, but not anymore.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, not anymore. Sharon. So, yeah, we'll practice it together.
Bias is one of those things that the best tip I can give anyone is like, there are like bias is something that we all have. There are like 52 types of biases, right? But some people think it's enough just to recognize it. And that doesn't lead to breakthroughs. You also have to like counteract it and disrupt it. Right. So, and that takes practice. I'll give you an example since you're on, you want examples.
I want examples. They want examples.
I got y'all. Listen, when you are in my position, I see all the ugly. People are like, yo, this is so great. I'm like, yep. And I'm the person that gets all the angry emails, all the emails like, I'm not doing this. Who can I call? Because I'm not joking. This is like our lives when you're in DEI. So, you know, we don't share it, but this is like where like really goes down. I have a DEI consulting firm, and I was consulting with a university in Philadelphia, multiple ones, but one of them in particular, they wanted to introduce that it was mandatory that everybody had to use pronouns now in their email signature. So we were so excited. We roll it out. A college-wide announcement goes out, and as you can imagine, so many emails came in, you know, private. People do it like on like the sneak, like the kids call it sneak this. And it was like a whole bunch of, hi Deb, great. I don't want to do this. And, you know, just so many of these. And, you know, so one guy in particular kept on emailing me. And at first he made it seem as if he just needed more information. So I'm explaining it to him. And then he just was like, everyone knows I'm a man. I'm not putting my pronouns in. You can't make me, you know, the whole thing. And we're going through this back and forth, right? It's like back and forth, like over the email. And this is a great example because we think that it's just like everyone is just so open, but this is how bias works. He wasn't really, he didn't really want to know more information about it, right? He knew that he didn't want to do it because what ended up coming out was he did not support this new wave of like us, you know, naming our genders and the whole thing. That's how bias creep in. It creeps in after I give you the 5 answers you've asked for, and then you finally say, you know, the real reason. And, you know, being in DEI, you gotta be really tough because I see so much of the ugly, right? Like we send out company-wide announcements about DEI initiatives, and, you know, they come in and folks are like, as a person who's part of so many different underrepresented groups, I'm a Black woman, I'm a first-generation college student, I grew up poor, you know, so when I saw like an announcement and you're like, why are we focusing on Black people? In my head, I'm like, ouch. Ooh, right. You just said that in an email to me, like, why are we just focusing on Black people during Black History Month? Or, you know, or like all these types of things. But I had to move beyond it and be like, okay, what's happening here, right? How do I get you to like really, and I guess my tip is you have to have like you have to be willing to have the hard conversations. And so many people are scared, and I get it. Or not scared, but they're also like, I get people say, I don't want to do that. I'm tired. It's hard being whoever I am. I don't want to keep on having these like, you know, conversations. But you're not doing it for that person to agree with you, but to seek understanding.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, right. Like I guess like, I'm not debating with you, but I need you to see me, right? Like I'm a Black woman in this space, and I need you to see me. And when you send emails about how you don't understand why we're supporting Black businesses during Black History Month, I need you to understand that it's hurtful because I belong to a community that, you know, for 400 years has been neglected economically, right? And this is important. That's how you see me. Same thing with the gender pronouns. I need you to understand that for some people, it is not right. Like they're not cisgender. They need to put those pronouns there so that you understand how they want to be seen.
Right.
And that's important. It's not, people get so stuck in this is how I want to see you, but that doesn't matter. That person is telling you, this is who I am.
How I want to be seen. Right.
Exactly.
This is what I self-identify.
Like. And that's what inclusion looks like. It means that it is not your job to debate them down on your belief. People get so tied to that. You can have those beliefs, but listen to what this person is saying. They're saying they want to be seen in this way. And who are you to tell them, to deny them that, you know, that they want to be called, you know, like whatever they want to be called. When I was in academia, this happened all the time. I had trans students who were going through transitions, and they did not always visibly look like the gender that they wanted me to call them. And that took practice. I would have to spend like my weekend, like, okay, next week I have to make sure that I call this student the right name, because that's important for me. I want them to feel safe in my class and in my space. And when we fight these things, it's like you're also saying, I don't want these people to feel safe, right?
Well, it feels like that. It can be interpreted in that way, that I don't feel safe. And I'm in total agreement with you. I always look to this quote: we can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. That's why I don't have many arguments anymore. Some, but not many, because I'm about receiving perspectives. I don't have to be, I believe as right and wrong as subjective things, and we'll talk more about that when I talk about the superpower. Okay, you guys, so it is 4:43, right? We have this one last question that I want to get to before I get to the participants. So look, you guys, if you have any questions for the panel, throw them in the Q&A so we can ask them. We want to make sure that we get to all of your questions, as well as you can hear our discussion about this. Again, we know that there's a lot more things to this. We're trying to cover a lot of information in a little bit of time, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask your question and get your question answered. All right, you guys. Now, it sounds like to me that you're leaders to be followed. Okay, so how are you mentoring, or how do you need to be mentored? So Chloe, that would probably go to you, in building an inclusive team or inclusive organization. Like, how are you, for those who are mentoring, for those panelists who are mentoring people, how can the attendees mentor others to have this inclusive mindset? And by having an inclusive mindset, build an inclusive environment. And for Chloe, how are you being mentored, or how would you like to be mentored? So who wants to go first? Jeremy, you want to do it? Do the honors? Where'd he go? Is he stuck?
I think
he might be.
Can you all hear me?
Pretty slow.
Am I good to go?
No, almost.
What about now?
Yes. All right.
Sorry about that, y'all. All right. Well, yeah. So, no, what I always do as a leader is I like to challenge, people on my team. I always want people to go from good to great, and there's always an opportunity when it comes to embracing this, and it can be a challenge, but, that's the important part. It's all about growth. So, I just always encourage people to, again, this is an opportunity to learn something new and add something to your skill set, add something to your knowledge base. So I always encourage and empower that, within anybody who, I'm leading, and so I think it's very important to just embrace the challenge, embrace the tough conversations, and just know that it's not the end of the world. You're going to come out of that learning and understanding a new perspective, which is going to allow you to create more out of the box solutions that work for everyone. Absolutely.
Reframing it from being challenging till it's a different perspective that I'm open to, kind of reframing the talk. Because yes, it can be uncomfortable if your bias kind of leads you. You have those obstructions in front of you that go, oh, that's not supposed to be that. I always go to the term common sense, right? So I tell my students all the time, because sense isn't common. Sense is not common. And so if you lead with that in your mind, having the conversation is more of open perspectives, understanding that this person may not have the information that you have or the experience that we all live from different vantage points per Dr. Deb's comment about we all have bias. You live with bias, you'll forever live with bias. So it's important to understand that you have those obstructions, but get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Yes. Okay, so Chloe, how would you like to be mentored in an inclusive space? What would make you feel more inclusive? What would make you feel more inclusive by a mentor?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to what I said before about just listening to people's perspectives and opinions and ideas. And I think, I mean, I've directed shows of a cast of 15, 20 people versus here I'm in a completely new building, still trying to find all the light switches and stuff. You know, it goes from people at the top of the org chart to the very bottom. It is just asking for help and asking for that support. Nobody has all the answers. If we had all the answers, it would be a very boring life. But you know, if we all ask for help and ask each other for the support that we need, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, it can only lead to a more supportive and a more well-rounded environment with better ideas, better accessibility, inclusivity, and it may be hard to ask for help. I know I struggle with that sometimes, but it goes back to also creating that safe space for that open line of communication, and back to the listening, just letting people know that you are available for that, and welcoming, sometimes maybe even prompting it for some people who may be hesitant to start that conversation. But yeah, just listening, talking, asking, all of the things.
All of the just communicate, right?
Yeah,
Communicate.
it's hard sometimes, but
I'm a Leo, so I have no, I'm a aggressive. I know someone said when I'm passive aggressive, I'm like, no, I'm aggressive. I'm going to ask, we're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. And I realize that everybody doesn't communicate in that way. So you have to find out how to communicate with them effectively. All right, Dr. Deb, how are you mentoring people? And I know that you are, right? How are you mentoring people to say, hey, you need this inclusive mindset. This is going to help. What are you doing?
I'm doing what was done for me, honestly. Like, I create my mentorship, like, toolkit based on what's worked best for me. I'm always thinking about like who I was, right? I was a first generation college student and I went all the way up to a PhD, but it was really traumatizing, right? I went to predominantly white institutions where I was the only, one who looked like me, but also the only person that was from where I was from.
Right.
Teenage mom, single parent, oldest of two. So no one had my background. And I have two mentors still. So to this day, they're still like my mentors, really strong women. One is an Asian American woman, the other one is a Black woman. And what they always tell me is that their job is to say my name in the rooms that I'm not in. And I love that. And I practice it all the time with the people that I mentor, right? I feel like my job is to mention their names, affirming positively in the rooms that they're not in, right? Like, I don't believe in when that door gets open for someone who looks like me, I close it right behind me. I want to just wide on open, which means, right? Because I think it's enough room for all of us. I want to bring you in. And the way I bring you in is by speaking your name, right? Like in those spaces. I'm in a lot of spaces with our top leadership, and I use those opportunities to spotlight, unlikely, right? Like potential leaders, like in our organization, ones they don't know, ones they're not saying I'm like their names. So I'm like, you should really consider so-and-so. And they do it, right? Like without any equivocation, they're like, okay. And then they send me an email and say, hey, Deb, I followed up with so-and-so, and this person is going to be like, I'm like, there we go. Right. So to me, that's what I'm trying to do. Like in my mentorship, I was like trying to model what unapologetic authenticity looks like in my mentorship. As a Black woman, as a millennial, we get really caught up in what professionalism is supposed to look like. Right, and I try my best to show up just like you are, Sharon, in my authentic self. I do it by code switching purposefully, right? With my mentees, I want them to see that just because I got these degrees does not mean that I'm not in any way diminishing my cultural identity. that's played out. I'm not doing that. In order for me to move up, I want them to feel like they can bring that with them, within it. And then the more we do it and show up like that in spaces with folks who don't look like us, the more it becomes normalized.
Yeah.
Right. I learned too, the more we do it, the more they also start to realize, what Tarana Burke calls the pluriverse, meaning two things can be true at the same time. Right. I can love Drake and also be overqualified for this position.
I would even say Future. I would have given it, it would have went all the way back.
You like my whole list, 21 Savage, the whole thing, whatever. I'm just saying, right? Like, I mentor folks by allowing them, giving them permission, right? Permission to bring those parts of themselves into their leadership, because that's also how you keep that door open, right? You need to show people that me moving within these ranks doesn't mean that I left so much of my cultural identity behind. And I think the more we model that, the more we're going to see, because I love that quote about how you can't be what you can't see.
Right.
Right. I feel like for so many folks from underrepresented groups, they need to see that folks like them, like not just that look like them, but the qualities that they have are also within these positions. So it's rooted in that. It's rooted like in a culture of courage. It's rooted in unapologetic authenticity. It's rooted in trying to be as empathetic as possible when they talk to me about their lived experiences and their issues. And not judging them, not problem solving even all the time, but just being someone who listens and can be like, I'm sorry you're going through that.
Right.
That's horrible. Let me know how I can support you, right? Just that goes a long way.
I like it. And I like that you addressed the code switch and not be the dirty word. Because I think that when we think about that, specifically in either if we're talking about underrepresented groups or generational, right? Yeah. So we go, no, I'm required to communicate in this way, and it feels so inauthentic. When in reality, if we look at code switching as a way to communicate effectively, because sometimes people can't hear you, depends on the language you use. It really depends on what you look like sometimes, because again, bias is rooted in experience. So I am empathetic to understanding people may not have had the experience with someone that's African-American, that's blonde, and then can be, again, a pluralist who I love Michael Franks, but I still love Savage 21, the 21 Savage as well. So I see that too. So this is good stuff. Okay, I got some questions for you guys. All right. So what are some resources that you all found to be helpful in the implementation of an idea or DEI council? So what kind of resources? How do they put it together?
Is this me?
That's probably you. That's probably,
I know. I'm like,
probably you, Deb. That's probably you.
I think the important thing to understand is that it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all DEI council. It has to fit your organization. So the first thing I would do is, I've been saying this before, is to do some type of data collection, some type of where you're asking employees from those groups what they would like to see, right? Because they should be driving it. So much we just start with ideas and we're going to do it, but what are their experiences? What do they want? So at OVG, one of the first things I was tasked to do was create to revamp our DEI council. And I listened to the people. I did focus groups, and many of the faculty, many of the employees said that, they want to see more of an executive presence in the DEI work. So I was like, all right, we have to figure this out. So we create a 4-part governing body DEI council. The first tier are our top executives, right? Who are a part of our DEI council. And that means that we meet quarterly. We, I give them all the materials before the meeting on what the new plans are. They, and whatever I need, whether it's insight, whether it's me pushing back on them saying, I need you to be more present in some of our events this year. What can we do about it? So I would say start there, figuring out sort of what does your organization look like, right? Evaluating that. And then, how much buy-in do you have from senior leadership, right? And then figuring what that is, and then getting them involved in the beginning. I can say mistakes I made before when I revamped my DEI council at my old organization, we didn't start at the top. And that was a mistake because so much of what we wanted to do required a budget. It required all these things. And what we had to do eventually was like get buy-in from top leadership for every single initiative, instead of doing it the opposite, starting with them, getting them to commit to it from the beginning, right? And creating a plan. So also that's important. Like your DEI council should not be created until you figure out what you want your plan to be. And it can be as small or as ambitious as you want it to be. But like, what's your first year plan? What are some goals and initiatives that you want to see for the first year? And then what kind of council do you need to create to like support those goals?
With one of my clients, we did that too, but instead we took pieces from each level of the company. So we had mid-management, we had frontline people, and we had senior executives, including the president, at some point to come in and go, I hear you, yes, buy-in, budget, I hear what you need.
All of it, yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yep. It's really important to get buy-in from all the levels of the organization.
Perfect. Okay, got one more question. In your experience, and this goes for any of you guys, have you seen better results with, feeling inclusive or equitable, even if you witnessed it, even you don't even have to have implemented, but have you ever seen better results on this topic individually, or do you find it's better in group settings to have like one-on-one or in group settings to have this conversation to get real solutions and real tactics?
I want to say one-on-one.
Okay.
It really depends on the person, first of all, but it's easier to have a tough conversation one-on-one.
Okay.
That way nobody feels like they have to defend themselves or try to, it could go left field real quick when it's other people involved. But having that one-on-one dialogue, you can really open up, especially for those who don't have any experience at all, or part of a privileged group of people. They don't, want to really open up about that. But, in a one-on-one setting, I've had those conversations personally where it's like, hey, I never knew this, thank you for, sitting me to the side and really explaining to me how that makes you feel, or even people, from your background feel, so I think one-on-ones can go a really long way. And it also too helps cultivate a relationship and make people want to learn more, make people want to do more to, embrace inclusivity. So I'm going to say one-on-one, it can work both ways. However, because sometimes, there may be this one blanket opportunity where you can really let your light shine. I feel like it's really about embracing who you are and what you bring to the table. So if you can do that, with a group of people or to the masses, always take that opportunity. But if there's a learning opportunity, I always encourage a one-on-one so that you can really get personal. Sometimes, you never know, somebody might come to tears and talk about, how they grew up. I've had that before. So I would encourage one-on-ones.
Perfect. Okay, so we're right about our time, but before I let you go, I want each one of you to tell your inclusive leadership superpower. What makes you super in this inclusive leadership space? Chloe,
Okay.
what you got?
Me?
Yeah, go do it.
I think I see people.
Okay.
For what they bring to the table, who they are, where they are now, but also where they can go, and what the future can hold for them, which can be multiple different things, but
Right.
Seeing the spark of their passions, their life experience, and their strengths and weaknesses, and how that can be shaped into what they want their future to look like and what it can hold.
Perfect. Dr. Deb?
I think my unapologetic authenticity is my superpower when it comes to being inclusive.
I wanted to say, John, using it in a sentence, really
Ooh.
quick, but I could not find, it's Philadelphia slang, you guys, if you don't know that. I was trying to be inclusive. I couldn't find a witty way to kind of jump in and use John, but all right. Jeremy.
Oh wow, that was funny. Okay, so mine is the power to listen and to understand different perspectives. I might want to put a cape on for this one because I really it's really fun for me. I like to discover and learn different things. I like to try different foods. Recently I tried some Indian cuisine, that I never tried before, and they helped me understand the culture even more. But no, just the power to listen, understand different perspectives. It's like a piece of, I take that and use those experiences to apply it to any situation that may hit me in life or on the job. And, it's a superpower because it just helps me create out of the box solutions that work for everyone.
I love it. I love it. And mine would be the ability, just like Jeremy, similar to Jeremy, is to be able to acknowledge those different perspectives. Oftentimes we hear them, right, and we're ready to combat them, but I kind of put a pause on that. And that's learned. That's absolutely learned behavior, to acknowledge that it's different perspectives. And guess what, Sharon? You're not a team of one. You are not a silo of righteousness. So I had to learn that coming up, but I do that pretty well. Okay, you guys, I want to thank you again. This was great. I know that time is of the essence. We went through this. We went about 3 minutes over, but I want to thank again to Dr. Deb, Jeremy, and Chloe for talking to us a little bit about inclusive leadership strategies. Please follow them, connect with them on LinkedIn if you want to learn more and more strategies and more ways to do things, and you want to have these conversations, including myself. If you're having difficulty in finding how to actually have uncomfortable conversations, we're here to help as always. And thanks again. I'm going to pass it over to Amy. We can't hear you, Amy.
I just want to say thank you all very much for taking part in this today, Dr. Deb and Chloe and Jeremy. Very insightful. I do have this recorded. We will be posting it on our YouTube channel for everyone. And Sharon, as always, thank you for putting together a fantastic conversation, because I feel like this is something that people will be conversing about going forward. It's very important. And it does piggyback off of Ms. Sharon's article in Venue Professional Magazine. So if you've not seen the January, February issue, it is available online now. And thank you all very, very much for giving of your time today. I know it's a valuable resource that you don't have much of in your position, so we appreciate it very, very much. And thank you to all of our attendees. We hope to see you guys again in April whenever we have our next E3. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll be in touch, everyone. Well, Jeremy, I need to talk to you anyway. I'll call you tomorrow. Deb, don't forget me to send that stuff. And thank you, Chloe. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys. See you later. Enjoy dinner with Hug Joyce for me.
I will.
Hug Joyce for all of us.
I will.
Bye.
Bye, guys.